Good evening.
Evening.
How are we doing? Fancy meeting you here.
I know it's almost becoming a regular thing.
Almost indeed.
Yes.
We are here to talk about everything we haven't got talking about with Indicator, which probably only left us about 150 titles to pick from.
Yeah, it's slim pickings. So.
Slim pickings indeed. And from what I believe in our conversations over Messenger and otherwise, you've managed to narrow it down to 145 out of those 150.
Yeah, I mean, this was, well, surprisingly or not surprisingly difficult. I mean, we were involved in a boutique label battle, which was really difficult.
That's right.
But getting the rest of the Indicator catalogue down to your 5 favourites or the 5 best is
so
was
5
really
that
difficult.
we're going to highlight. I think we went for like, let's go for 5 as being like a manageable amount, but of course that became an Indian mental torture exercise. With which to do.
Tough.
So I have I have stacks here. I have a smaller stack, and then I have a bigger stack, and I think you've got mini stacks all over the place.
Yeah, I've got a few stacks as well.
With which to do. So we shall start going through it. But I thought, while we wait to, for the crowds to build, because obviously,
obviously,
a big event and everybody's week this week, especially now that I've got snow outside certainly, and people are packed in and turning up.
Well,
what have you been watching recently?
I watched a film that was recommended by Hus, A Touch of Film, and that video will be dropping, as the kids say, probably tomorrow night.
Right.
It was an absolutely wonderful film, even though the story may have been told before, but because it's Japanese, it's told in a slightly different way, and it will put a smile on your face. It even put a smile on my face, which is sometimes hard to do.
Dear God, that's like chapter 7 in the book of How to Make a Scotsman Smile.
Yes,
you're entering.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hus, once again, if you don't know Hus, he's pretty much an expert in Asian cinema. So
Touch of Film.
I've also just put up a video from one of the latest Indicator releases that couldn't make my 5, but it's certainly on one of my stacks, The Death of a Gunfighter, Richard Widmark. The first film directed by Alan Smithy, or as we know, nobody wanted to put their name on it, so they put Alan Smithy's name on it. And I found another Petrie Volonte film, We Still Kill the Old Way, which may not be top class Petrie, but it's not far off. I managed to find it a German Blu-ray, and hopefully we will get a few more Petries, because he is a director that we really need to see more released. Hopefully Radiance, in their kind of Italian film releases. So.
I do like that you've decided that there's not enough releases here in the UK to suit your needs. So Germany we go to.
Yeah. It's just every now and again you put in Petrie or Volonte into eBay and something pops up. So
the way it goes. I finished watching .com for Murder, which was Nico Mastorakis' attempt at doing Dial for Murder / Rear Window.
Right.
I think I can safely say it's not very good. But sort of interesting insofar as it kind of predicts an awful lot of technology. It's like people getting killed over the internet. There's some of it's kind of, okay, you got that right, but an awful lot of it's just hokum.
Did you buy that in Arrow or stream it? Or
I bought it because it's got a lovely slipcover and, it's a rather fully featured disc. I will say that. It has lots of stuff on it. It has interviews with Roger Daltrey and Huey Lewis. I mean, even if the films, they're both in it, by the way, they didn't cast actors. He thought he would just kind of up the star power and the people that might want to see it by casting these two people in it. And as Roger Daltrey says on one of the interviews, he says, he get paid a lot of money for a day's work, and he was tired of screwing beautiful women. You can only do that so many days a week, so he thought he'd give that a go. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, indeed. So maybe I've oversold the film already, but that quote.
Sting was busy, so
indeed. And I watched Her. I hadn't seen Her before by Joaquin Phoenix. Now I know that's a more recent film. I thought myself and yourself are in. I think it's like 2013, so it's not like it's recent, but anything in the last 10 years, both myself and yourself are probably the people not to ask. you know, let's be honest, it was very good. And then I watched Prisoners by Denis Villeneuve as well. So that's been my watches this kind of past couple of days. So, oh well, that's where we are. We'll have a crowd now. We have SGS is here. Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Did we see the Criterion announcement from a couple of hours ago? The Pasolini set coming in June, 27th of June, I believe, to be exact.
Yep. I have 6 of the films, but
I was going to say I have quite a lot of them as well.
3.
Yeah, I think most of us have done like 6, like Medea, Terama, you know, Gospel according to St. Matthew, etc. I have a lot of those through Eureka and BFI.
I may be tempted though.
I mean, it is pretty. It always depends on the price.
Yeah. I'm assuming, is it just Region A or is it multi-region?
We never know until one day that they decide. Well, the Pasolini films haven't been any that BFI or Eureka have said are going out of stock. You know where Eureka have been doing this thing of, oh, we're losing the licenses to these ones? Yeah. I don't think the Pasolini ones fallen into that unless they were all sold out by that stage.
Yeah, because the MOC has Hawks and Sparrows and Pigsty.
That's right, indeed.
Akatone.
Indeed. So I believe this will probably just be Region A, but we live and see. Yeah. It looks like a rather nice set, though, I have to say.
It does.
And I can go sit on the shelf with my unopened Varda set and my barely watched Bergman set. And
I've got the Wong Kar-wai as well.
The Wong Kar. Well, I haven't. See, I learned my lesson at that point. Going, like, just watch the other ones first. Stream the Wong Kar-wai ones of the ones that you want to see, and then you can pick it up when it's on a sale.
That one is really velvety and shiny, and it's like stroking a polished leopard. If there is such a thing as a polished leopard.
I mean, it does raise the question of how you would know what a polished leopard would feel like, but I'll take you at your word. You're like a man of the world.
A leopard that's just come out of a jungle stream. If you've ever stroked a leopard like that. So.
Oh, well, it must be a thing that happens quite a lot in Scotland. Yes. You know, snow leopards haven't made their stuff here, and Peter's here as well. Yes. Raising the bar and saying this better be genius.
I don't want to say you're going to be disappointed, but spoiler alert. But
I mean, some people think some of those trashy films that you review, Peter, are genius. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Let's see how we go. Do you want to start us with your first hearty recommendation, favorite, whatever it's going to be?
I'm actually going to go in numerical order.
Oh dear God, I haven't done anything quite as organized as that. Okay.
And one of the best debuts of all time. We've talked about it before. Number 68, and that's Blue Collar.
Blue Collar.
Paul Schrader's marvelous debut. How he somehow wrangled Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto before they all went their separate ways. Furious at each other. It is one of the films from the 70s that is still relevant, and sadly not much has changed. About worker dissatisfaction, how the unions aren't sometimes necessarily on your side, and how big business and other forces keep everybody at each other's necks, whether it's about race or how much money somebody's getting and somebody's not getting, to kind of distract you from the bigger picture of how they're actually screwing you over in the first place. Yeah. It's noisy, it's confrontational, but it has a wonderful energy. There was a lot of tension on set, and it feels that way. The film almost crackles with that energy and friction. It's got a great score, and as I say, it's still relevant, and to me it's one of the essential releases in Indicator's catalogue.
Yeah, the perfect double feature with Working Class Goes to Heaven that a lot of people have obviously been talking about by Radiance as well. Very similar kind of themes, kind of different takes on it, obviously. I would say Blue Collar is Yaphet Kotto is at his finest. I think he's absolutely magnificent in it, even in a film with Keitel and Pryor as well. Here, both great, but I think he's just amazing.
And obviously the famous shot where at the end, it was the end of the shoot, because literally once the camera stopped, he couldn't wrangle them anymore, and they all just ran away. But it shows the value of just sitting a camera down sometimes and just not moving it and not being flashy and not being showy. Just sit a camera down and just leave it alone.
See where we're at. Yeah. A great first choice there. A very, very strong first choice. This will be all downhill from here, quite possibly. I'll say good evening to Goose, who has just arrived. And feel free for anybody to stick your kind of favorites as we're going along in here. I shall do mine in numerical order as well. And one that is a firm favorite of mine from very early doors, and one by a very celebrated director, Mr. William Wyler. And this is The Collector, Samantha Eggar and Terence Stamp, which is pretty much a two-handed film.
Yeah.
Whereby, spoilers, Terence Stamp kidnaps Samantha Eggar's character and locks her away in a basement in a dungeon, in like what seems to be a hammer dungeon in some ways. It's like one of those outside buildings, but it's an inside set, quite honestly. But the kind of torture that he kind of puts her under in this kind of totally passive aggressive way, and him trying to keep her or collect her for himself, as just like his butterflies that he collects as well. I think I really like The Collector. It seems to split opinion a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it as well. It's not in my short list of 19, but it'll probably be there or thereabouts, because it's
somewhere between 20 and 70.
Yes, it's become 20 and 70, yeah. Obviously, William Wyler, it might be strange for some people who are familiar with his earlier work that he did this. It's not quite Michael Powell doing Peeping Tom, but certainly there will be some people who will be like, are you sure that's William Wyler, or is it a different William Wyler? Again, a really claustrophobic little film. And again, it's that similar to Peeping Tom in the sense that Terence Stamp's character isn't portrayed as a complete monster.
That's right. Yeah.
Not entirely. So again, it has that kind of odd balance that, again, some people obviously find difficult, because he's not judged as just this simple monster who has kidnapped a woman.
Absolutely. He sort of has this human side that's almost like, God, what happened to him when he was younger? You know, kind of what made him this way. And then the scenes where maybe he's going to get caught, or she's trying to escape, or doing all those things that you would normally see in this kind of film, I think are really quite effective. You know, there's really good tension, I think, happens throughout some of it as well. Really enjoy The Collector.
I remember when it was announced, being really excited about it, because I'd heard about it, but I hadn't actually seen it at that point.
Indeed.
And that's the wonder of Indicator.
Indeed. As I'm saying, he just watched Shogun's Shadow. He doesn't do tragedy, but that film hates horses. I actually have a film on my list that celebrates horses. That'll give you a bit of a hint for what I've got coming up. SGS says Blue Collar was my first Indicator Blu-ray. What a start. What of a film. Second favorite Schrader film after Mishima.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned it before, but Blue Collar was in that 3 or 4 titles that might have been my first. But that was certainly one of the ones that got my attention.
I got you.
Because at that point, I think it was barely even available in DVD in this country. So
indeed. And then Florian Pink, great name. Evening guys,
one of the best names.
Stream Live. Yeah, it is. It's certainly every time I see a good name like this, I go, I wish you could just change my own real name to something much cooler and approachable like that.
Yeah. Indeed. Welcome, Floydian.
Indeed. So that's one down for us each.
Yes.
No overlap yet. We're
flying through this. This is spine number 106.
Oh.
And this is Missing by Costa Gravis. Yeah. Again, this is absolutely wonderful. 1982. And for me, this is one of those Jack Lemmon performances, along with Save the Tiger, along with the China Syndrome, that leads to Shelley the Machine Levine and Glengarry Glen Ross. This is just a superb performance and a superb film. Again, still relevant, about a kind of rule following, line towing American whose son goes missing in Central America, or an unnamed Central American country.
Yeah, I always have it as sort of like Chile, because it's sort of like it's supposed to be Pinochet, I think, in Chile, but I think they do name it. It is one of those things.
So he goes down to investigate. He thinks his son is just falling in with a bunch of hippies that are just causing trouble, and slowly he begins to get his eyes opened as he witnesses what's going around him. Great support by Sissy Spacek, and even just how Jack Lemmon changes, not just his outlook and his character, but how he dresses and his clothes, and as his eyes are opened, especially when he has meetings with the US government, who obviously just do not care whatsoever, and he begins to question everything he's been told by the government and the stuff that is propaganda that's sent out about what's happening in this country and his own country.
Yeah, I think Missing's the best film in the entire Indicator range, actually, in terms of film. And it also was Oscar nominated as well in about 1980 or whenever it was released as well. So it has some kudos in that regard. But like I say, great performances. Jack Lemmon's just incredible in it, and even John O'Shea. Isn't it John O'Shea plays his son? He was Lex Luthor, I think, at one stage, possibly. Anyway, and
Lemmon doesn't do as much of the mannerisms that sometimes can take over his performances now and again. It's just a great performance of somebody getting their eyes opened.
Yeah, terrific film, I love. But that was in my 5, so that was the first overlap. So since you did an overlap, I'm gonna do an overlap. So I'll do The Beast Must Die.
Okay, I don't actually have it in my 5 because I was kind of trying to be professional and not just going, The Beast Must Die. That's the greatest film ever made.
Well, it is in your top films list, I believe, isn't it? It is indeed. So the quintessential werewolf movie, I think, quite possibly the greatest werewolf movie of them all. Because which other film has the werewolf break?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they give you the last chance.
Yeah, it's the greatest werewolf film of all time if you don't count the werewolf.
Do you know, like most films of that type, once the actual werewolf and things come on board, the film's kind of on a downer from in that entire genre. But what you have in this film is just this incredible cast, led by Calvin Lockhart, obviously. More Calvin Lockhart, the better. Who kind of gather in one place where they kind of find out who the werewolf is amongst them. It's suspected that one of them is, and Calvin must capture him.
Yes.
Kind of a bit campy and a bit kitschy, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's got so much stuff going on, obviously, at the start, because he's an African-American and he's being hunted. Right. You start thinking the film's about something else, and then he turns out he's the big game hunter. Obviously, Anton Diffring, a young Michael Gambon, Peter Cushing. It's just Charles Gray. Such a great cast. It's basically an Agatha Christie film, but obviously there's a werewolf. There's a nice, forward-looking look at aliens as far as the perimeter closes in one scene, and there's a wee beep as they follow.
That's right.
It's just so wonderful.
Yeah, the use of high tech, I think some might say, and there's by today's standards, maybe not at the levels that you might currently see, but I'm sure back in those days it was like, ooh, it's cutting edge.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of nostalgia for me because it did scare me silly as a child, and of course, watching it now, it's not scary in any way, shape, or form. But the scene where there's a certain character's bedroom, and obviously the wolf has been in, and there's like bloody paw prints all over the walls and ceiling, and that image just kind of puts you in.
Terrified. Made you the film fan you are today.
Yeah. It's very much like Manhunter, when William Peterson goes into the room and he just sees all the arterial spray. It's like you don't see the act, but you figure in your head this horrendous thing that must have happened.
Well, that's exactly it. You save yourself a lot of budget and create a bit more tension by just kind of planting the ideas in people's head rather than kind of just saying, "Oh, this is what happened," or showing you what happened. Which, given some of the reveals and stuff, was probably the way to go for that film. I think
There's a nice red herring as well, and
there's more than one.
Yeah, there's more than one in The Beast Must Die, and all the characters' little backstories of how strange events seem to happen and murders happen wherever they're in towns and cities. It's quite good as well.
I like to say the werewolf break, when they actually give you the chance to pick who the werewolf is, and I mean, you're not doing it right if you didn't sit there and go, right, I'm going for them, and just before you play a game, no, I'm going to change to them.
Of course, now you can obviously pause it at home to give yourself more time, to write down all the clues and stuff.
Oh dear, but yeah, terrific. And you didn't have it in your list. I'm stunned, surprised.
I didn't.
Shocked,
I just had it in my short list of 19.
That's very nice. So, next one, 2 down each.
I'm going to go with Spy Number 125, a film that I remember coming out at the time, but obviously never saw it, and it was like so many indicators, just completely forgotten about. It's 1987's Bellman and True. This is such a beautiful little British crime film about a bank robbery, but because it's British and it's the 80s, it's got a flat tire. It's not quite the Fast and the Furious. Bernard Hill is this kind of estranged dad from his kid, and he's been held captive by these bank robbers because he's the whiz that will figure out the alarms and stuff like that, and how he does is quite ingenious for 1987. It just has such an authentic feel. The bank robbery, again, this is far from Heat. This is lukewarm or whatever.
Would have been a great name for the film, though.
Yeah, directed by Richard Longcrane, who obviously would go on to do bigger things, and Richard III, Ian McKellen, and
that disc has the 2 cuts, doesn't it? It has the movie version and the TV version.
Yeah, there's a 122-minute cut and a 114-minute cut. I'm sure I remember Barry Norman reviewing this in 1987, but I never actually saw it.
God, Barry Norman.
It's just a beautiful little. It's everything that's kind of good about British cinema, as far as the kind of authenticity and the character actors, and it does have a real heart to it. And how they get out of things is kind of obviously more realistic than Hollywood films, perhaps.
Yeah,
it's a kind of Shaggy Dog story essentially, but it does have a heart, and that I think that counts for a lot, and I think that's why I've got a soft spot for it.
And of course it has Bernard Hill in it as well, who's an actor that I think just isn't in enough stuff.
Yeah,
just one of my favorite people. He kind of does a lot of different types of character very well. He can be the kind of homely dad like he is in Restless Natives, or the judging dad and that, and then do detective crime or otherwise. Yeah, great fun indeed. Right, I am going to go for another big hitter. These all feel like big hitters in the big scheme of things, but since we haven't went in this kind of genre or time, I'm going to go for John Barrymore's 20th Century.
That was in my short list.
Was that in your short list? Well, it is. I mean, screwball comedies, I don't think indicators something that they're really known for. But this, I think, happens to be one of the very, very best. I think I watched this and Bringing Up Baby back to back. One from Criterion and then this. They came out about the same time. And I actually think I prefer 20th Century. I think Carl Lombard's in here. And I think I like her screwball better than Katharine Hepburn's, quite possibly. But it's this idea of the starlet and the star maker and how one is reliant upon the other one. I made you, who are you going to be? You go off, and then they get stuck back together and try and put the band back together. It's very funny. It's very madcap, and it is just genuinely a lot of fun. And like I say, one of the very best screwball comedies I think there has ever been made.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the earliest as well. You could argue it's kind of a blueprint. I mean, obviously it happened one night isn't necessarily a screwball, but that kind of comedy is a blueprint as well of two people who don't like each other, but at the end of the film they get together. I mean, for me, sometimes it gets a little bit too shouty at each other. There's literally scenes where Carol Lombard and John Barrymore are just screaming at each other. So I don't think it's perhaps as polished as the ones that would come later.
After,
but it's still absolutely fantastic. And as I said, I think it's one of the blueprint screwballs. So even though that formula might become a little bit more polished, like His Girl Friday or whatever, there is an energy to it, as you say, that sometimes is manic and perhaps a little bit too manic at times. But the two central performances, and obviously I love Carol Lombard. So again, it was another one that up until that release, you couldn't even get it in a half-decent DVD. So it was another one that when it was announced, I was so pleased. So.
Yeah. Just a lot of fun, like I say, and that freneticism is definitely when you compare it to the Grant classics that came later. But you know how suave and smooth he is a lot of the time, unflappable, and this one is very much more high energy. I do like that.
But I mean, to be honest, bringing up Baby, you do kind of forget how manic that is at times as well, where you will have like 4 characters just shouting over each other for like long periods.
It has that polished leopard thing nearly that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. So.
Oh, that's us. So there's my third one. God, we're nearly there.
Be able to do all the honourable mentions in depth.
Indeed.
This is more of a personal choice, but I also think it's almost a perfect film. It's 219.
Oh, my next one.
And it's Things Change. If you only know David Mamet for his swear fests, this will show you a different side to him. This is absolutely beautiful. Talking about, 20th century, this could almost be a golden era Hollywood film. Starring Joe Mantegna, Mamet regular from the theatre days in his early work, and the amazing Don Amici. I mean, there's extras in this that will make you cry when Joe Mantegna talks about Don Amici on set. It's just absolutely beautiful. Again, it's a story that perhaps we've seen before about mistaken identity, and Don Amici's taking the fall for a gangster, and Joe Mantegna gives him a treat by taking him to Lake Tahoe for the weekend, where he's mistaken for a gangster, and all hilarity breaks out. Full of Mamet regulars, but Robert Prosky turns up and gives a wonderful turn. It's just, again, one of those films that will put a smile on your face. And again, in these times, sometimes it's difficult to put a smile on your face, and you can't really put a price on that. Yeah. But it's just so delicately done, so perfectly paced. The acting is sublime. It's just an absolute treat and an absolute joy.
Yeah, it's also a bit un-Mamet-like in that it doesn't have that tone of seriousness that a lot of his films and stuff does. It's almost like a buddy cop movie between Mantegna, who's supposed to be looking after Don Amici's character, but actually it's sort of the other way around.
Because Mantegna's character doesn't kind of realize the inevitable ending that's going to happen. And you also get a young Bill Macy as well, sporting a blonde spiky hairdo. It's just so beautiful, so beautifully shot as well. It's just about perfect.
And another just great example of how the extras can make you fall in love with the piece of art even more. Like you say, that Joe Mantegna interview, and then even the revelations that Don Amici was supposed to be cast in the other role initially, and all that kind of stuff. It's just a wonderful, wonderful race, and one that just kept on getting better the more they invested time into watching the bits surrounding it, etc.
And Don Amici, by all accounts, is as classy as you think he would be. He was just
took a young Joe Mantegna under his wing, so to speak. Yeah. Brilliant. Great choice, and it was on my list as well.
Yeah, and again, a film that I think I had on one of those DVDs that you flip that had 2 different presentations of it, 4:3 and 16:9, and it was just no details on the disc. It was so again, when that was announced, it was absolutely fantastic.
Terrific. Okay, number 4 for me. I think SGS had said something to the fact that Blue Collar was his second favorite Schrader ever, Mishima. I think my favorite Schrader is Light Sleeper.
That was on my short list.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, Susan Sarandon. Willem Dafoe as a sort of drug dealer, a high-class drug dealer, I suppose someone could say, for high-class clients, who finds himself caught in the middle of people looking to change careers, and then him looking to change careers, and kind of get caught in the middle of it. It's a type of film that it's almost like an early true romance in a way. Even some of the scenes that come later on that kind of mimic the end of True Romance, I think, a little bit. And a film that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like, but as it got through, I just found myself just both feeling sorry for Willem Dafoe's character, kind of also feeling that he got his he's getting his just rewards, etc. You know, you kind of caught in the middle of all those, and you have just terrific supporting cast. Victor Garber's in it, etc., who I always love, and just a Paul Schrader film with a bit more heart, and again a bit less serious than some of his other fare.
Yeah. It kind of follows on from his Man in a Room films that started. Obviously, he wrote Taxi Driver and then American Gigolo, and you know, he sees that character, the Willem Dafoe character, all as kind of the same character, and then obviously did First Reformed,
yes, indeed.
And then to another extent, The Card Counter. You know, these are all men who are solitary to some extent.
That's right.
I remember seeing it in video and liking it, but then being excited about another Indicator announcement when that was released and watching it again, it's just went up in my estimation. So that was on my backup 5.
You back up?
Yeah.
Oh dear, and let's not forget I know you don't like to talk about George C. Scott, but hardcore.
Yeah, I'm not a George C. Scott fan, but that obviously isn't.
So one left in your main picks, and I suppose at that point people can turn off if they want to.
Yeah, please don't. There's more wonderful recommendations to come. Indeed. Again, we're not paid by Indicator, honest. 221. Now, I recently got the Criterion 4K of this.
Oh, yes, I know what you're going to say.
But I still love the Indicator release of it because I absolutely adore the film. All the way back from 1995, if you can remember that far back. Devil in a Blue Dress with Carl Franklin, who, for me, as I've mentioned ad nauseum, made 2 of the greatest American films in the 90s, One False Move with Bill Paxton and Devil in a Blue Dress with Denzel Washington. I still think it's Denzel Washington's best film. Just a time and a place, perfectly captured. There should have been sequels because there was more books based on Easy Rawlins, the character Denzel Washington plays. It's a neo-noir, if you want to call it that, but full of wonderful characters. The plot, you have to pay attention to what's going on. Beautifully shot, beautifully acted. Again, it's just about perfect for me. And yes, I've got the Criterion 4K, which looks great, but the Blu-ray is wonderful as well. Because again, I had this in a German Blu-ray, and then when Indicator announced they were releasing it, I was just so happy because it's a beautiful film.
Yeah. And another sort of diversification for Indicator around the time, they've done a couple of like those 90s films. I would say something like even Geronimo would have fallen into that. They were sort of like by well-known filmmakers or sort of cult classics, and they do run the gamut kind of from the 20s, etc., the whole way up, etc.
But it's a great film also about friends and actually just finding a place. You know, at the end when he's talking to Albert Hall on his doorstep, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Cool. So I've got one more to go, and I've got to go to my backup list. Oh, of all of the ones that I picked, okay, this is the one that's calling me. I think you did a random review of this one. Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones, and Richard Pryor in Bingo Long's Traveling All-Stars Motor Kings.
Yes.
The Negro League baseball film, let's just say. That is an Indicator release because it's a film with heart.
Yep.
You have a crew of kind of ragtag individuals just trying to scrape by and make a living with their talents that they have, traveling from place to place and, getting up to capers along the way as they travel around the country.
Yep. It's a joy. Directed by John Badham.
John Badham, indeed, yeah.
And again, there's an extra on that, which is an hour-long documentary about the Negro Leagues, which is absolutely fascinating. And the story is not that far off the stuff that actually happened.
Yeah.
Again, another example of, an extra that really makes a difference. It's just a great film. Again, I had no knowledge of whatsoever.
Yeah, an interesting.
No idea it existed.
I mean, I would say I'm a baseball fan, and had some knowledge of the Negro Leagues, but that kind of like an awful lot. I would say baseball as a sport is a sport about characters in general. It's a kind of as a sport. I don't think it's the most exciting thing in the world, but once you get a couple of characters and put them in together, it kind of elevates it a little bit. And this kind of does that to the max. Like I say, you get Billy D. Williams, Richard Pryor, James Earl Jones together. You don't need to even get them to do very much to make the film great.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. Come on.
Yeah.
All we need is more James Earl Jones.
Indeed. So that's our main 5. Some might say that could be the end of the broadcast and the stream, but
we've got too many other ones. we'll just race through these.
Indeed. But what I'll say, because my comments have stopped loading on the thing. Oh, there we go. Here we go. I've just reloaded them. Because said, absolutely love Devil in a Blue Dress. Easily one of the greatest neo-noirs ever.
Yeah, great cast. I mean, Maury Shaken, who's so underrated. Jennifer Beals was probably really underrated as well. Tom Sizemore does Tom Sizemore things. And obviously Don Cheadle, which I think, was that his first role? Certainly one of them. As Mouse, almost steals the show.
I do love that we're so long in the boutique Blu-ray game that neo-noir is a very predominant genre that's coming out and being released right across the board as well. I can love to celebrate that. And Nazarene with a bit of a job, I would say, myself.
Yeah, The Beast Must Die is elegant, I think you'll find.
I think this is why we like each other, Peter, as well. You know, this we have similar tastes or otherwise in terms of. I know this maybe isn't everybody's cup of tea, but I see joy and beauty and greatness in between the folds of its skin.
Absolutely.
So some recommendations that maybe sit somewhere in either just didn't make the list or
my backup 5, which is now 4 because you took one of them. Charlie Varick, Walter Matthau, and Andy Robinson, and a really scary performance by Joe Don Baker as one of the scariest villains in cinema history. Again, this is in the ballpark of the first one I bought, roundabout there. Directed by Don Siegel. It does Don Siegel things, i.e. it's brilliantly paced, never stops, and a great performance by Walter Matthau. Gardens of Stone. I'm a Weirdo. This is my favourite Coppola film. This was one of the films he did to pay off his debts. Again, this is James Earl Jones, which is one of the reasons I love it so much. And James Caan in one of his best performances, Angelica Houston. And this is about the military cemetery during Vietnam. And James Caan desperately wants to train these kids before they go and get slaughtered. And all he does is just bury them when they come back. There is a line about, they say killing is my business and business is good. Well, burying is our business and business is better. Really need to get a tea towel with that written on it. Just absolutely wonderful. Chalk Garden. Deborah Carr.
The Mills.
Yeah, this is amazing. Yes, Deborah Carr did quite a lot of babysitters and nurse performances and all of that, but this is just so good, and it's got a tremendous ending. This is also available in imprint as well.
That's right, so it is. Yeah.
And Orders to Kill, which is one of the Region A, the controversial Region A only releases.
I was going to say, what is this release you have?
I know, this is amazing. It's about 4 different films mixed into one. It's part spy film, part kind of guilt, angst, and melodrama, part training film. It's really weird, but it's quite tremendous. Really brutal for 1958, about a trainee spy who goes over to potentially murder somebody who's selling secrets to the Nazis, but is he or isn't he? It's just so strange and so odd, but it's completely Indicator, and it's completely fabulous.
Good. Let's go for a couple of the commentsy ones. So this is one I haven't actually seen yet. It's sitting on the shelf. Track 29, Oldman and Nicholas Rogue.
It's interesting.
Strange movie, even for Rogue. I mean, the man's got a lot of strange films. Let's be honest. So I don't know if I'd be expecting anything else. So I mean, that almost makes me want to go and watch it. You know, the fact that it's out Rogue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I will have to rewatch it, but it's not my favourite Rogue, put it that way, but because it is decidedly odd, even for Rogue.
And then Goose had said about any love for the Snake Pit. Definitely one of his favourite indicator releases that I don't know he would ever come across otherwise. Falls into the... Actually, I meant to grab that. The kind of mental...
Yeah.
The mental female. So there's a number of those releases.
There's lots of them, like Lilith with Warren Beatty, which is really
good. Pumpkin Eater would fall into that. Suddenly Last Summer.
It's in my short list of 19. This is so good. I think, did she win an Oscar for this? Or she's certainly nominated for it.
That's a very good call.
It has a great, almost hell-like overhead shot in the film. Granted, all these women's mental health films generally are because they're confused about who they love and things like that. It doesn't really go too much into how women might have other mental issues. It's generally... they can't decide who to marry. But aside from that, it's, again, a surprisingly dark film for 1948.
Yeah.
And there's stuff in it that you don't think they would almost have gotten away with. So the Snake Pit is definitely, and as Goose says, one that I didn't really know anything about. So
yeah. Like I say, the thing that a lot of those films have in common, like you said about Lilith, Pumpkin Eater, Sunless Summer, they are all great films because the lead performance is outstanding. You know, whether it's Jean Seberg, you know, Anne Bancroft, who won the Oscar. I think she did win the Oscar for the Pumpkin Eater. Elizabeth Taylor and Olivia de Havilland was nominated but did not win for Snake Pit. Sad to say, but yeah, a great shout there, Goose, definitely. I'll do a couple. I'll go in reverse order here. Talking about horses. I know Charles Bronson's not everybody's cup of tea. The Valdez horses are Chico, whatever its alternative name is. Definitely one of those, almost feels like spaghetti western, in that it was Italian film, etc. But has Charles Bronson as a solitary character that raises the best horses, the most beautiful horses, and the people are trying to encroach on his turf, really, and he wants to fight back. And, you know, while I'm doing all that, we have to have Jill Ireland in there somewhere as a female, you know, so that bit feels a bit contrived so far as she's shoehorned into the story. But again, one that I definitely went through a Bronson phase of just kind of loving his deadpan same character no matter what genre that he's acting in. This and the Valachi Papers, I think, were released the same month.
Yeah, but I will say the last 15 minutes don't go the way you think.
Yes, indeed.
And they don't go the way that we're kind of led to believe westerns should go.
Yeah,
it's actually really interesting, and maybe one of the reasons it wasn't successful. But I think it's actually it worked really well the way they do the last 15-20 minutes.
One of the things I'll point out between this and the Valachi Papers as well, it has an interview. This one's about 20 minutes with a screenwriter who was uncredited called Stephen Geller.
Yeah,
both those interviews are amazing because he tells it warts and all. It's another one of those good examples of when somebody's not doing a promotional type of interview where they say one thing, many years later you do it again and you go, no, this is actually what happened on set. It's great. Big fan of that. Robin Williams, Moscow on the Hudson.
Yep.
The defecting movie from Russia to America that sort of shouldn't work, but I think, you know, sort of does. I don't know how Robin Williams kind of pulls off the fact that he was ever Russian in the first place.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe it's because we respect the man and he's no longer with us or otherwise. But, yeah, a lot of great fun. But that one
he does a good job with the language. So.
Yeah. I mean, his English is excellent.
Yeah.
When it comes to really, really great.
Russian's really good as well.
And can play an instrument as well, you know, multi-talented. Yeah. But again, a film with a bit of heart on it there as well. A film that I would expect to be sort of controversial, people liking. Again, I don't know what it is about this, but Hoffman, by Peter Sellers and Sinead Cusack.
That makes a good double bill with The Collector.
That's a great shout. Because Hoffman and The Collector seem like the same movie at one point, but actually go in different directions. And I think I think the fact that this one does go in a different direction without being overbearing and too much is what really works about it. The fact that you can have interesting characters who can appear menacing or maybe not appear menacing, something like that. There's something really charming about Hoffman. But then I could also see an awful lot of people going kind of a bit unbelievable, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those that I wasn't really looking forward to watching, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I'm sure I can understand why people might have a different reaction to it. I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about films in the last 20 odd years, but the two-hander seems to be something that we've kind of people just don't do anymore.
That is very true.
I can't think of too many two-handers in the last 20 years, but again, I don't really follow modern cinema that much.
There's been a couple of comedies. I think they still do two-handers in comedies like Step Brothers and that kind of stuff, although that's probably about 15 years, I don't know, Mr. Nice Guy, etc. But you're right, like the drama or the crime or the two-hander, even on TV.
Two people in a house, strangely enough, they don't seem to...
Yeah. I mean, that's literally all Hoffman is. The idea that he there's a girl that he works with that he seems to quite like, and as part of a blackmail scheme more than anything else. She has to stay with him for 3 days, and it goes places that film. Yeah. But I do like it and do enjoy it. I'll let you go back to your stack.
Now I can understand why people would certainly not like this. It's A Time for Dying by Budd Boetticher. But this is the film that Boetticher apparently did because a favour for somebody who owed money or something. There's a weird backstory to it. It's only 73 minutes, but it has a wonderful cameo by Audie Murphy as Jesse James, bizarrely. The sets are made out of cardboard, and you can see it probably costs like $200 to make. But there's something really odd, but something that really works in it, and I don't know why. But it's another Budd Boetticher. Obviously, they've got the box set, and they've also got Bullfighter and the Lady and the Bullfighter. But this is a weird one. But again, it completely sums up Indicator for better or worse. I absolutely loved it, but I can see why people would just be like, what? And then another film that its Indicator taking another turn is The Phantom of the Monastery, which is one of the two silent Mexican films. This one's from 1934.
Indeed.
It looks absolutely beautiful. The extras are excellent. And again, it's signalling the Indicator might be going in wonderful little directions.
Well, we have a Mexican box set that kind of seems to allude to exactly that. One thing I'll say about Time for Dying, I took against it a little, or she would say in Scotland, again it, because of the portrayal of Judge Roy Bean, which I had recently watched the Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, which, I think is the less historically accurate one, because I think Judge Roy Bean was seen as a bit of a comic kind of, or not a very serious person in the Wild Wild West, but an interesting one all the same, for sure.
Yeah.
And then obviously Phantom of the Monastery is great. It is that haunted mansion, very the old dark house in a lot of ways, but done in Mexico and what's going on. Good. People and monks and the hoods, and there's a mysticism about it, which really works. Yeah,
there's a room you don't go into, and they've put wood all over it and bolted it all up, and you just don't go into that room.
I mean, they obviously don't go into it. That's not what happens. Yeah, I'll do two then. Go for the, again, maybe rather peculiar. Written and directed by Jerry O'Hara, who I've done a couple of videos about as being a guy who did like social commentary kind of dramatizations. A lot of them are in BFI Flipside. This one's The Brute. This one's about domestic abuse.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that I enjoy this film about domestic abuse? Some of it's a bit rough.
Yeah, I mean, they probably wouldn't get away with it nowadays, but again, it is looking at an issue.
There's a scene with a poker that I think is a bit not in keeping with the rest of the film in some ways, but not just one person And there is a bit, again, there's a bit of a graphic sort of sex scene in it as well, which I thought was, okay, this is another thing that kind of takes me out of this a little bit, because for all intents and purposes, it feels a bit like an ITV drama for a large parts of it, and then happens to go in turns and twists that kind of take it a bit more serious fare. But I really do like The Brute. I think it's a great, and it has a great interview with Jerry O'Hara as well in it, who I think would like to hear more and more from.
And also a nice little documentary piece of the time of a woman that was actually that had set up shelters for battered women.
Yeah, indeed.
Which obviously didn't always exist. And sadly, obviously, we still need them. So,
indeed. And my second one is one that I'm forever recommending, and that's the first non-English title, I think, actually was 90 Degrees in the Shade, even though this was a UK-Czech co-production. With Yuri Weiss, I think, is the director, indeed. About a woman who works in shops having an affair with her boss, and they come and get inspected or audited. Doesn't sound like the greatest setup for a film, but I assure you, and very much, it almost does feel like the second run release that they never released, in terms of being whimsical and sort of having an exploration of character in a place that is supposed to be London, but sort of does feel European at the same time. It has that dual feel to it. I have a lot of time for 90 Degrees in the Shade.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting film. I would say I'm not as high on it as you are, but it's certainly an interesting film, and I do like the fact that they give you both versions as well.
That's right.
You've got the English language version as well, which I obviously didn't watch, but and it's cut slightly differently as well.
That's right. It is.
So it's almost like two different films, kind of.
I often wonder if my appreciation of Over Time has grown because I seem to be the only person that likes it.
Sometimes you have to stand on that hill by yourself.
Stand by myself, but die on it, otherwise. But yes, it's something that I enjoy quite a lot. We have a request, I think, more so than anything else. They might be giants.
I was going to get to it, honest, but we'll just get to it now then. I mean, these two, if I was doing this exercise in a couple of years, certainly one of them might be in the top 5. Even although I'm not a big fan of One of the Stars. As They Might Be Giants, which just came out. This is an absolute stunner. About George C. Scott, who I believe is a lawyer, but he also believes he's Sherlock Holmes. And Joanne Woodward is a psychiatrist who wants to help him. For some reason, it is just perfect. As he goes around looking for Moriarty. I think this officially does count as a Sherlock Holmes film, doesn't it? It's just absolutely wonderful. Both leads are fantastic. This does actually have 2 cuts as well, a 92-minute and an 87-minute cut. There's a commentary by Barry Forshaw and Kim Newman, who seem to have combined forces on just about everything nowadays. There's a promotional documentary, which are always fantastic. There is I'm going to say fantastic again, which is terrible. There's a 27-minute Kim Newman piece on the history of Sherlock Holmes throughout cinema, which is absolutely wonderful. It's an absolute joy and instantly one of the best films I've seen this year. And then another in the same batch is Death of a Gunfighter, Richard Widmark, that I've just put a video on. Really fascinating Western, even though nobody wants credit for it. The original director walked off after 25 days. Don Siegel came in and did 14 days worth. Richard Widmark didn't want the original director credited. Don Siegel felt he didn't do enough to take the credit. So that's why Alan Smithy's name is on the film. It's about the end of an era that came out the same year as The Wild Bunch. Richard Widmark has been the marshal for 20 years, but his shoot first, ask questions later attitude rails against the town leaders and upstanding members of the town who essentially want rid of him one way or another. There's so much going on under the surface about race and stuff like that. And again, it's just really good, despite the fact that nobody wanted anything to do with the credit of actually making it. lots of familiar faces from character actors that you'll recognise. Yes, it's flawed, but it's just so good. But I would highly recommend both of them, especially They Might Be Giants, which is just a stunner.
And they're both from the most recent batch that came out, isn't that right? With Freud and I can't even remember what the other one.
Yeah, the Marlon Brando one.
Oh yes, indeed. So that's those. Cool. Let's go for another old style one. Walter Huston, Vincent Price, Glenn Langan, and Gene Tierney in Dragonwyck.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, very gothic-y kind of noirish thing where Gene Tierney's character is whisked away from her simple farm life by Vincent Price's character, who's a very rich lord in New York. I think it's set in, really. It's kind of around there anyway. And maybe it's almost Jane Eyre-esque, if I could say that. It's very reminiscent of Jane Eyre. There's something about the house that maybe doesn't sit right. I think great drama, great performances, great a really, really stylish film as well. Dragonwyck is a recommendation there. And then a film. There's not too many of these. Maybe Who's the only sci-fi within Indicator.
That's a good show.
The Mind of Mr. Soames. And I say sci-fi because it's a bit sci-fi insofar as a man wakes up from a coma, from a very long coma, and kind of has the mind of a child. And what do you do with that person? What's right to do? There's kind of like very existential questions asked about the people that are treating him and what they have a right to do or what way they should be letting him live his life. All that kind of stuff that kind of set up very clearly with a big centre performance from Terence Stamp, but you also have people like Robert Vaughn and Nigel Davenport, etc. in it as well. And Christian Roberts, I think, is the other doctor in it. It's terrific as well. Very, again, underseen. One of those ones that I think would appear on like one of those free movie channels or something. People go, oh, it's probably no good. Very good watch.
I think that's been on Talking Pictures. That's quite a lot of Indicator releases have been.
That's what springs to mind for me as well. Indeed,
So if you want a preview of Indicator releases, watch Talking Pictures in the UK and you might actually see a few. This film is one of the most bizarre. I did a video on it and it's strangely enough was very popular. And this has been performed on stage and in film quite a few times. There's actually an animated version on the release.
Yes.
Spine number 240 and it's Bartleby.
It was on my list as well, indeed.
Well, maybe you can explain it. It's only 79 minutes long. And it's just about a character who would prefer not to. So he gets a job with Paul Scofield, and every time Paul Scofield asks him to do something, he just says, I would prefer not to. And it's just how Paul Scofield reacts to that. It's how people react to Bartleby. Do they think he's really clever because he's saying this, or he's really lazy, or he's really strange, or he has a mental illness? In the film, you don't know where it's going, as he just essentially repeats, I would prefer not to. But in the end, it's actually quite moving. And I don't really understand why. So maybe you could explain it to me, Chris.
It's a very simple premise, and it's very easy for you to, as the viewer, to kind of sit there and go and judge Bartleby from the outside, going, why is he being like that? Why not just conform? Why not fit in? He has to do the most minimum thing to fit in, yet he doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to. And at a certain point, because you're sitting and he's doing the same thing and he's consistent pretty much the whole way through, you do develop a sense of, well, am I just projecting or something? It transfixed me, I have to say. And it transfixed me so much that probably like yourself, when I was finished watching it, I was like, right, I'm going to watch this other version of it because, again, I want to see a different representation of this because, again, very simple premise, very simple setup. And otherwise, but there's something utterly fascinating about it.
Because as Paul Scofield's behaviour gets wilder and wilder to try and do something about him, you do kind of go, well, maybe Bartleby's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you look at it, we all kind of, well, most of us go to jobs we don't like. You know, at the end of the day, we retire and then we die, and it's just like, for what? So maybe like Bartleby has it right. It's a film that, like the best kind of films, it does make you ask questions.
It does, and because there's not a lot going on in it, action-wise or really deep, it kind of is one central theme through it. It does make you focus on that all the time, so not to get distracted.
But I think they knew, because it's 79 minutes, if it was 2 hours, it would be too much.
Indeed, yeah. And maybe it's just a stoner. Maybe that was the bit that we didn't see.
Yeah,
for sure. I only have 2 left. How many have you got?
About 10.
Right, keep going then.
But I'll just whistle through them. The big fix.
Oh, that's one of mine gone. There we go.
Well, do you want to talk about it then?
Oh, no, I was going to say, you probably can speak as much about this as I do. Richard Dreyfuss just being Richard Dreyfuss, in a lot of ways, bit charming, bit whimsical. And I do like a political thriller, especially a 70s political thriller. I think you've talked many times about the love for the Pakula films, in and around that time. And it sort of it's not quite as dark or as serious as anything like that, but it has sort of plays in similar themes for me.
It has that wonderful point, the fact he's still got those kind of dreams of the counterculture in him as a private detective, but all his friends have become lawyers and, they've kind of conformed. It's like, Woodstock. Most of those people that were at Woodstock became lawyers and bankers and, completely conformed. And that's kind of what the undercurrent. But as you say, it's really light and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A film that, again, would be controversial nowadays and probably still is, Putney Swoop.
Robert Downey.
Absolutely wonderful. A film that I think we both love, but not sure would recommend to anybody, The Blockhouse.
Yeah, I debated about The Blockhouse because, I mean, if somebody told me that was the most boring film they'd ever seen in their entire life, I would sort of accept it and say, you might be right.
If they'd actually seen any of it. Because they decided, let's shoot this as realistically as possible in a bunker with only the light that's available. So it is quite dark, not just the subject about soldiers being stuck in a bunker for, I won't tell you how long, because that really hits like a ton of bricks at the end of the film.
That's it. One thing that does strike me about The Blockhouse that I think is something that I can say very positive about it. It intrigued me so much in how its flaws intrigued me so much that I devoured the rest of that disc in ways that I rarely do. I mean, the director, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's Clive Reese, isn't what you call is the director. The fact that I remember that about this damn film that you really can't see, that the sound is terrible on, but it turned out was a real passion project of his, is something that I think again, I was talking about in the comments to somebody. It's one of the things that makes Indicator, as released, not just about the singular film that we're talking about here and recommending. The story behind the story is often something that's as interesting as everything else that goes with it. And like, God love whoever thought, you know what, we'll do a Blu-ray of The Blockhouse.
Yeah. I mean, again, it is a wonderful, strange film. I think, well, I certainly put the subtitles on. I think you maybe mentioned that you put the subtitles on when you're watching.
When you have to.
Yeah, the sound's not very good. The picture, it's very dark, as I say, because it's underground bunker. But again, to have that, as you say, as a passion project, because it is an amazing story, even though it probably will make you weep. And imagine yourself in that situation. It's horrible, but it's, again, nobody else would be releasing that. So,
but it's also a film with a pretty good cast as well. Like,
it's
again,
a really good cast.
It wasn't just something that, oh God, well, it's not like the Michael J. Murphy stuff that we're saying where he basically was probably whoever could find, could act, could do, go, you'd be cheap, you'd do. It's Peter Sellers in it as Charles Aznavour. It has Liam Nissick as well. I think Liam Nissick's really terrific in it as well. Really, it lends itself to really good performances, and I think that's what does make it win for me.
Yeah, and when you learn the true story, it is absolutely harrowing.
Yeah, it's terrific. Keep going. These are good.
Geronimo, we mentioned earlier. Walter Hill.
Like Geronimo. Yep.
Again, one day we might get a director's cut. Mentioned 20th Century, obviously. Carl Lombard. Another controversial one, but just a wonderful one. Melvin Van Peebles' Watermelon Man.
Yep.
With the wonderful Godfrey Cambridge, who again died way too early, about a white man who wakes up and he's suddenly black. It is Godfrey Cambridge in whiteface at the beginning of the film, but again, it brings up lots of wonderful points. And I think after this, Melvin Van Peebles was asked to leave Columbia Pictures and go his own way. Obviously, we mentioned The Beast Must Die because I love it. A film that I didn't really get the first time I saw it way back in the 90s, but I found it just absolutely wonderful. And after a death in the family over Christmas, Orphans is just a wonderful release. There's fantastic extras. Again, a film that I didn't really like that much when I saw it in the 90s, but I really appreciate it more now.
Yep.
They made me a Fugitive.
Fugitive, yes, very good.
With Trevor Howard, and a different kind of performance that we usually see Trevor Howard.
For sure.
Directed by Cavalcanti. It has some weird elements, and it's just a cracker. Again, doesn't stop. I've just got 3 more. No Orchids for Miss Blandish, which I mentioned quite a lot. The Daily Express said it's nasty, gross, brutish, a dish for twisted minds. So that's probably why I like it so much. From 1948. This is an American film noir, but it was written by an Englishman who'd never been to America, didn't really know the American language and phrases, so he kind of invents his own. It's mostly a British cast pretending to be Americans in America, so it just has this odd kind of atmosphere, but it is really quite brutal as well and nasty for 1948. It's just an absolute joy. The Triple Echo,
which I haven't seen, I have to admit.
Which again is a perfect indicator film. It's a triple header with Glenda Jackson and Oliver Reed, who could almost be Mr. Indicator. About a soldier pretending to be a woman to get out of being a soldier, which is fascinating. And then David Mamet's slightly more usual Oleana, which is somewhat divisive. I did actually have a wonderful comment on my channel when I mentioned Oleana from somebody who said, please don't delete this comment, but here's what this writer thinks of Oleana, which was fairly negative. And it's like, that's absolutely fine, because it will start arguments, and that's the whole point of the film based on Mamet's play. It's a great date movie. You will start an argument in an empty house because Mamet skillfully kind of says, oh, you're on this side. No, you're on that side. Why are you on this side? Why are you on that side? You'll probably change your allegiance about 20 times during the film. And that's kind of what films are about. It certainly provokes a conversation.
Yeah, Oleana was on my list as well. It's very stagey as a film, you know. It's very much feels like a
two-hander.
Two-hander, but it feels very location shot. William H. Macy's just terrific, I think, in it as a character that you kind of sympathize with, kind of reviled by at some parts, and kind of, you know, kind of goes back and forward between all of those things. But yeah, I'm a bit of a fan of that one. And rather than do anything else, let me just go for. I'll share my screen. We'll just go for technology here, and I'll just go to the.
You're a braver man than I.
Indeed, look at that. So some of the other ones that I didn't grab off the shelf, because to be honest, my arms were sore. So Spring Night, Summer Night, which was like an independent movie. It's not very long, etc. Again, made for about £20,000 or something. Is one of the most beautiful noir kind of shot, kind of American independent set out in the middle of nowhere, and about basically the story of a rural family. There's just again something about that I just really loved it. Again, enchanted by in like a similar way to Bartleby. You know, I just couldn't stop watching it. It was just kind of so beautiful. Eve, Joseph Losey, you've obviously done your Lucy season. Again, another film that's sort of divisive, but it has Stanley Baker, who's usually rubbish in everything, but is not bad in this.
But you're not a fan of Stanley Baker, though.
I mean, I say I'm not a fan. I really like this, and I like Yesterday's Enemy, but aside from that, most of the other stuff I think he's just insert cardboard cutout, and you'd be better off. Sorry to his family. But it has this kind of two-hander of Jean Moreau and Virna Lisi as these two incredibly beautiful women that he's caught between. I mean, maybe this is why I don't like him. I don't know.
You never know.
He is entranced by one and married to the other. Tough life.
Yes.
Day of the Dolphin. I know you're a bit of a fan of Day of the Dolphin as well.
Yeah, it's another really strange one, but kind of lovable as well.
Yeah, so the Dolphins are getting trained for nefarious means, as it turns out, spoilers or otherwise. But again, twisted, wacky, sort of has that 70s political espionage, Pakula kind of feel to it at the heart of it. Another George C. Scott film, and another, you'll just have to make me a list of this George C. Scott films you don't like, because it seems like every one you watch.
Yep, there's something about him. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I'll go for Grey Lady Down, mainly because it has the best extra in all of Vindicator history in it. Yeah, which is Alan K. Road. Alan K. Road. So it's a submarine film, war film. This was a weird month that they kind of put out, but with Charlton Heston and David Carradine as they kind of rescue the sub, and very much disaster movie of the 70s feel to it. But Alan K. Road, who is the noir writer, used to work this kind of area and does, I think it's about 40 or 50 minutes long or something.
It's amazing.
Bizarre. I just wonder if they were working with Alan and went, actually, if we got Alan for the extra, will we release Grey Lady Down? I wonder if that's the way round that it went, rather than they got Grey Lady Down and then decided to do the extra. That might have been interesting. Same month, had Hellfighters.
It gives you history of submarine disasters, the history of how they built the equipment to help submarine. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating and riveting.
It's probably the best extra that there isn't on any Indicator release. Hellfighters, I only mention it because, some of these films can be a bit serious. Hellfighters is very Saturday afternoon, Sunday mornings, Sunday afternoon, kind of stick something on for a while. And is it the only John Wayne film in the collection? I think it is.
Initially, this was the one that was testing my completeness. Obviously, until the Adventures box set came out. So, obviously, I got both. But because I'm not the biggest John Wayne fan, and I'm not saying that in a George C. Scott sense.
And then the last one we're going to mention, which is going to be a very controversial choice, is Voices. I quite like Voices. With David Hemmings and Gail Honeycutt as the couple who are going out in the woods for a nice break, but everything just doesn't seem quite as it seems. And it's probably most famous for being a film that is not helped by the upscaling to Blu-ray. I think is probably the biggest thing to say. I think if you'd have seen this in VHS or TV or something in 480p, you wouldn't have noticed the fact that one was very much shot in film, and one portion of the inside bits were shot on TV cameras, essentially. And so the two things have a very different look. And there's a whole discussion about that in the release itself, about why that might be, that I think once you watch the movie, may tell you something else, which is one of the reasons I think I really like it.
I mean, obviously lots of people complained about it, but if they'd actually read about it, they would have realised the reason for it. I mean, it's safe to say it won't get a 4K.
No, definitely
That's
not.
one film that's not going to get a 4K, but again, it's two great performances, and it has a strange atmosphere, which strangely enough fits the story.
Yeah, it is an atmospheric film by design, and I think it pulls that bit off really well. So out of the 170 releases that were left, there were probably only done about 120 of them. So, fair to say we're fans of the label.
It was difficult to say you can only have 5 and you can only talk about 5. I mean, that's... Again, not everybody's cup of tea, but as Chris says, sometimes the film you go, oh, that's okay. Saturday, Sunday afternoon, we used to see it in television, but then the extras are just fascinating.
Yeah, so
like that Grey Lady Down one, the extras just stunning.
not a terrific film by any kind. So
Yeah.
it does have, you know, you don't see David Carradine in that kind of role too often either.
And Stacey Keach as
it's-
well.
it's-
You
it's-
could
oh yes, indeed.
almost say
Another-
he's Mr. Indicator. There's a few actors in line for Mr. Indicator of the Year. But
I wonder if we could get them T-shirts made or something, or like a little trophy. Don't know what way that would look. I hope we got to your favorite if you've been watching along and kind of have some personal favorites. The one that I haven't seen that I know would probably appear in many people that I know is Cisco Pike.
Yeah, that's a fun little film.
I know a lot of people like Cisco Pike. I hadn't seen it, so I didn't include it in mine. But that was the most notable absentee that I could think of from my list that I know a lot of people really love.
I mean, again, did we talk about, is there any that you really don't like of the single editions?
So other films that I don't like, yes, there are a couple. I wouldn't say I really dislike them in any great sense. I'm not a massive fan of Little Murders, which I know is a bit sacrilege to a lot of people. I think it is a bit heavy-handed in its black comediness. For me, I don't really like Garrett Cool's performance in it. And the other one I don't really like is Born of Fire. Again, I just think there's something that if you like the voices gets the tone right, you know, I just don't think Born of Fire gets quite the tone right insofar as I don't really believe the mysticism or the location and him in it and all of that kind of stuff. So I think those are the only two that really jump in my mind of films that I don't really like, but both discs are pretty. Little Murders disc, a great disc. Like Alan Arkin is all over it. It's a really wonderful tribute to him and his directorial debut. And like I said, somebody else will come down and say that's one of their favorites. And I remember when it was released, a lot of people were very excited about it coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited, and I do probably like it more than yourself. I mean, it did remind me a bit of Buffet Foire with Gerard Depardieu. Yeah, it's far from perfect. But again, who else is releasing that?
No, exactly right. And I will say in general, sometimes depending on my mood, films that are sort of nihilistic in nature sometimes rub against me the wrong way. I mean, that's if you were going to recommend me a type of genre that I might not like, that's pretty much it. You're taking a chance with me, but that's me. Any you don't like?
It's probably the relationship stuff. So Psych 59.
Okay, yeah.
And perhaps A Severed Head, even though I do enjoy A Severed Head more than Psych 59. But again, I will be watching them all again, obviously. But for me, there needs to be a kind of angle. And having, like, you know, two couples in a room or whatever. That's why when I did my Lucy, you know, Accident is nowhere near my favourite Lucy, even though it's very popular and lots of people like it. Again, that's got Stanley Baker in it.
Yes.
There's a common theme. So Accident's not my favourite Lucy by a long shot, and kind of Psych 59 and A Severed Head perhaps aren't my favourite, even though the title sequence of A Severed Head with the wee dolls is fantastic.
Terrific.
Yeah.
He said he loves Ship of Fools, which I think is in the first 50, isn't it? It has the greatest ensemble cast. It certainly does. It's a lot of fun in that regard. And Murderfield does make a very good point. I did look at it on the shelf and definitely did not lift it. The Devil's Man has Cushing, has Donald Pleasance, and it still doesn't work.
Yeah, it's it's not got a scene with killer cows at some point. It's interesting. No, yeah, that's even a push. It's great to see Donald Pleasance and Peter Cushing together on a
It certainly is. Obviously. You know, it seemed like they got a nice holiday out of it. You know, it was shot in Greece, and you know, I wouldn't say I hated it. It's not. You know, it was kind of disappointing. I think.
It's quite dull for Cushing, Pleasance, and devil worship. It's quite dull. Let's be honest.
It reminds me very much of the Vinegar Syndrome releases of a couple of films that were like the Mexican ones, like Grave Robbers and Cemetery of Terror and stuff. That were very much the same ilk. But I do like the way that you misspelled Cushing. I think on purpose, because he probably wants to disavow his association with that movie, but he can communicate that he was associated with it.
One day when we rank all the titles, The Devil's Men might be near the bottom, I would think.
Near the bottom, indeed, but a good shout there as well.
It's got a lovely cover, though.
Oh, it definitely does. Definitely does. So that is our rundown of the Indicator collection. Dear God, you even got a couple of very recent releases in there.
Yeah, you had to. They Might Be Giants. A stunner. Go buy it immediately. Again, we're not paid by Indicator. It should still be in stock.
You know, maybe one day somebody from Indicator will watch this and go, do you know what? We'll throw you a tote bag. I've already got 2. Thanks very much.
I was going to say, it's time to give them the entire collection for free. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Too late.
Oh, well. Can't be giving it to us. We pay their wages. If they start doing that, they have to give it to somebody who doesn't give them money every month. Yeah. Well. But that was great. Thank you very much for your company on this lovely journey. We'll have to think about something to do next, quite possibly.
Absolutely.
To put our I'll say your considerable talents to good use.
Oh, no. You have far better knowledge of this technical racket than I do.
So I think for the next one, we'll just make sure that I talk less and do all the tech in the background. You speak more. I think that's a pretty good blueprint for future.
But Indicator, I know people are averse to blind buys, but sometimes a blind buy from Indicator turns into one of your favorite films that might not be perfect, but you might end up loving it for different reasons.
It is a good point, though. I think a lot of people run down blind buying as a thing, and I do understand, money being a finite resource.
Yeah.
But I can't say that I'd have heard of very many of these films beforehand, or if I've heard of them, had seen them. And I wouldn't have had a lot of weeks of entertainment and months of entertainment, even just doing these streams from doing that. They've enriched my both my cinema watching and my cinema appreciation in terms of usually representing people both in front and behind the camera who I never would have known anything about. And for that, I'm very thankful.
Yeah, because as you've said before, even if a film isn't the greatest film, they're usually showcasing, especially in British cinema, a point in British cinema or a type of film that was being made in 1964 to 1968 or whatever. So if you're interested in actually the history of cinema, especially in Britain, it could be a fascinating journey.
Indeed. Plus, when you watch one of these releases, because I know there's like 3,000 made of each of them, and so that means there's 3,000 copies out there, you sort of feel personal ownership of it. To kind of say, I discovered this, even though you didn't source it, you didn't, you watched it and you want to talk about it because, again, they're not the kind of films that you can go and talk about with the person that you work with or something like that, which was kind of the point of these streams in the first place. That was kind of
you can't go into work and go, I saw this great film about domestic violence called The Brute, and I
recommend it.
Yes.
If you have light in the fire tonight and you've got a poker sitting beside it, might just give you some pause.
Yes.
As Florian Pink says, we just need another Indicator sale after all these new discoveries. Now, again, if only they had sponsored us, they could have timed one exactly to start at 10 o'clock tonight. Would have worked out great for the 5 people watching or otherwise.
Again, there's plenty of titles that won't be out of print that you can wait for a sale that, perhaps are worth a sale price rather than full price.
Well, but as you probably realize, our house run these quite regular sales on the standard editions, but I would say if anybody's not in the rat race game that with myself and you are of just having all limited editions, etc., just buy these things in standard edition. You'll get an absolutely terrific disc, and you'll get them at a really great price.
Yeah, and you get all the extras on the standard edition.
You do indeed.
So you're not missing out on the extras. So.
You're missing on a slightly bigger case and a booklet. That's pretty much it. And as Goose says, great for recommendations, bad for Wallace. I know the pain because I watch everybody else's videos and feel exactly the same.
Yep. That's the video that I made on Hussy's recommendation wasn't cheap, but worth it. But my wallet
is lighter,
suffering a little bit.
Indeed. So if anybody wants to find you, where could they find you? And all the places you could hide.
In all the places I could hide, I'm just on YouTube with Solitary Ronin Films.
Great stuff. And that's our rundown of Indicator. Thank you very much for everybody's company. It's great fun. And if you watch any films that we didn't talk about that you did watch subsequently, you can always pop them at the bottom of this, the comments of this one, because if anybody finds their way to this video on a later date, they'll maybe check out the comments and go, and there's some more recommendations. And they come from that person, and I can go and check them out, etc.
And let us know your favourite indicators.
Indeed. So thanks very much, everybody. I'll speak to you soon, and hopefully we'll have to do this again sometime. All right?
Yes.
Take
Pleasure.
care.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.